What are fundamentals of fitness? Like say you want to lose weight. What are the fundamentals of that? Yeah, reduce caloric intake, move around more. That's literally it. Reduce your calories and move. If you want to gain weight, increase your calories and move around more. And lift weights and maybe have a flexibility component. It's very, very simple. But people want to complicate this stuff with what? Oh, let's talk about the difference between like steady state cardio and high intensity interval training. Let's talk about supplementation. Let's talk about the nuances of various lifting splits and things like that. Like, look, all that stuff is great if you are already doing the fundamentals. So for example, I talked about this a bit the other day, but I was trying to lose a bit of weight. I found what I was doing was insufficient. Like whatever, this shit, I was reducing calories, I was moving around a bit more. That's not working. Well, let's increase the activity level a ridiculous fucking amount and start going twice a day. It kind of sucks, but oh well. The thing I'm currently doing isn't working. I had a student, all right, this kid just joined the mentoring. So I'm like, all right, what's your accountability for Saturday? What do you want to be held accountable for? He's like, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna do some approaches. So Saturday rolls around, I'm like, this literally yesterday on the call, I'm like, so how many approaches do you do? He's like, I did 5 approaches. I'm like, that's good, okay, let's applaud the small victory, but quite frankly, that is insufficient. And so I asked the student who had just joined, I said to him, thanks a lot, man. Is this beer? Shit, all right. Oh. Or like a Red Bull, I'm like, what is this? So, I asked the student, I'm like, how many approaches did you do this past week in New Orleans? He's like, probably 200. 200. Okay, I don't know if have you ever been to Mardi Gras? It's like hundreds of thousands of people just flowing through the street and like puking on each other. Like if you ever go, like if you see a puddle of liquid anywhere, do not step in it. Do not pick anything off the ground. That liquid is likely a combination of like blood, vomit, urine, semen, sweat, alcohol, horse diarrhea. Like it's everything. It's like every bad thing. That's what it is. And it's kind of funny because the beads are everywhere and they're like spherical. And somebody always eats shit and like falls right in one of these puddles. I saw this time this girl. It was so bad. She was like skipping down the street and she like skipped off of the curb and like slipped on the things and she like cracked her back on the curb and landed in a puddle. I'm like, oh, she's paralyzed. So, it's a real shit show, but and it's super trashy, like redneck Vegas. But again, the reason that I like it, number one, it's experience. My son didn't really like it too much. He's like, this is so trashy. I'm like, yeah, this ain't Vegas, dude. It's redneck Vegas, where the coolest guy from every trailer park goes to party. But you do have that unlimited ability to anonymously just introduce yourself to random people again and again and again and again and again. That's what's good about it. So a novice person can get those repetitions in and get to the point where he begins to see the patterns emerge. So you need to understand, like people always ask me, how long is this gonna take? It doesn't matter. As long as it takes. That's it. It's gonna take as long as it takes. Who cares? It does not matter. So I used to do that. I mean, I wrote a book once, right? So I had 1,400 raw pages of material. Now, the task at hand was what? The task at hand was to compile this into a narrative like a coherent narrative that somehow makes sense and has like an arc and whatever thematic aspirations I had to include and things like that. So aside from maybe the educational component. So I would sit there and I began the editing process. And then I would like literally, before I would begin most days, and then after I was done most days, I would say, okay, you've done this many pages so far. There's this many more pages to process. How long is it taking? Your page rate per day is this. And I would sit there with a calculator. If I worked this many hours, and I would like game out all these hypothetical scenarios of how long it was gonna fucking take me. Now, the amount of time I spent playing on the calculator, I probably could have finished it like 2 months earlier. Do you know what I mean? So there's really no point in hand-wringing over this nonsense of how long is it gonna take. You need to, again, punch through the wall. Like punching through a wall, that would hurt. That'll hurt your hand, right? But not punching through the wall. Like if you punch through that wall, you're going to get the reward. If you just sit there and like look at the wall and think about how much it sucks on this side of the wall, the cortisol levels and the psychological damage is going to be far worse over time. You just got to do it. Like people are always like, what's like, I literally had a guy, and you know, I coordinate the programs through like a WhatsApp thread. And I keep these threads alive. I just let them go so people can ask me questions. Like if you take a program with me, you can ask me questions in perpetuity for the rest of your life. The rest of my life, I guess. You're all pretty young. I'll probably be dead before you, but, you know, inshallah. But, you know, you can ask me questions in perpetuity. So literally a guy from Sweden in 2016, he just hit up one of those groups last night. He's like, oh, I just got out of a relationship. I'm back at square one. I'm thinking maybe I should start doing like, you know, you know, and it's less intimidating to me. And what I'm like, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Just do it. Just don't be a coward. Daytime, nighttime, irrelevant. All that matters is you have to do massive. To get back into this, you're going to have to do massive. You have to take massive action and have mass repetition of social interaction until it clicks for you again. That's it. So if y'all are going out, you're like, I'm going to do my two interactions. It's insufficient. Insufficient. Possibly over time, it might be okay if you do it a lot. I mean, look, all that matters is the repetitions and putting the hours in. That's it. And then, so that's number one. That would be, I would say, the move around more. And in terms of like the dietary component, in this analogy, is what? Move it forward as much as you can. If that's sales, close. Every time. Close every time until you don't flinch it. You know what I mean? If that's getting romantic, introduce that angle every time. Every single time. Because I see too often what happens. People go in and they do what? Hey, how's it going? And the people like them. They're like, oh, hey, hi, how are you? Cool, friendly interaction. And they're like, it's going good. Oh, it's going good. If I attempt to invite them to you know, the after party or whatever, if I present my invitation, it might stop going good. And then what'll happen? Well, you're back to square one. You're back to ground zero, we call it. Like maybe you had to speak to 5 people before you found this person that was like willing to engage with you. You're like, well, I had to talk to 5 people. If they don't like me, I'll be back at ground zero and I'll have to talk to 5 more people. 5 more. Well, you need to get to a headspace where you live at ground zero. That's your home. You like it. It ain't no thing. It's nothing to you. You love it. You think it's absolutely hilarious to be at ground zero. You just don't care. Now, by the way, here's the thing. You know, I'm up here like I talk a big game, and the reason why, I've been through all this. Like every mistake that you have made in this, I make. And in fact, you know, in the lead up to going to that New Orleans program, I hadn't been out in quite some time, and you know, we were dead sober for like several months. Well, you know, since the holidays really. And so me and my son, Eli, we're like, yo, let's just go out a bunch the week before to kind of, you know, just so we make sure we hit the ground running when we go to the program. And I gotta tell you, the first like night out, I kind of sucked. I felt that inhibition to doing the first introduction. Like I saw people there, he's like, yo, go talk to him. I'm like, okay, and I was like waiting for the right time, all that. In fact, I think we saw you out that night at Jackson. Yeah. And we were having a bad night, dude. It was a bad night. I've been doing this 20 years. The fear of approach will always be there. It will always be there. But you need to develop habits and strategies and understandings that allow you to circumvent that homeostasis. Like, okay, it's a homeostasis. It's a resistance to state change, really. Right? I feel fine right now. If I go talk to those people, I might not feel fine. Why? I get a loss of validation. I get an embarrassment, possible confrontation. I just don't want to do it. Like, I feel fine now. And again, intellectually, you can tell yourself, oh, it's fine. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing bad's going to happen. It doesn't matter. You don't want to hear it. Your emotional state does not want to hear it. Your RAS has been hijacked. It's like, no, dude. Proof, not promises. Proof, not promises. But what do? You just got to punch through the wall. We punch through the wall. And by the way, you know, I had several unfortunate interactions. I don't remember the details of them because I don't like write those to disk. But by the end of the night, we had hit it. I'm like, oh, I remembered. I was like, oh yeah, right. I'm hilarious and awesome. What am I thinking? And they just started laughing their ass off, and it was just on. Okay? And it took a couple hours for me to get to a headspace where I remembered all of that. So it doesn't matter. Like the fear will always be there. But what you've got to do is you've got to create a non-judgmental space inside of yourself where you can play around with this and not have it be this, balls-racking referendum on your value as a human being. What does it mean? It means nothing. You tell yourself a story, if this person doesn't like it, it means nothing. It means nothing. It has zero quantifiable effect on your day-to-day life. Like I said before, there's a difference between exercise and performance. The stuff we do in here is knowledge and very often exercise. Like, I came in and you were doing some exercises with storytelling and doing some exercises with being more, free in your tonality and things of that nature. That's great, right? That's the analogy that I've used many times is it's like, a football player lifting weights or doing agility drills on tires in a field. Those things, they're not going to do those in the actual game. But both of those activities are going to enhance their capacity to perform in an actual game. So again, you can work on some of these things in isolation, and that's why in mentoring we will separate all of these so-called modes of expression, and we work them individually. Then we reintegrate them into a more completely realized whole instrument. You're not supposed to be thinking about that stuff when you go out. You just trust that the work you've done on that is going to allow you to be more free. The awarenesses that you've developed are going to sort of kind of percolate down. And it's going to be like a trickle-down effect into your actual communication when you're performing. But you have to perform. You know what I mean? You actually got to perform. You can't just exercise all the time. You got to perform. Another big thing, so with this whole identity, like it's not me thing, understand identity is fluid. Look, I say to myself, Jeff, who is Jeff? I am someone who's very skilled at dating. That's not a concern for me. Like, I'm not concerned. In fact, I view it as somewhat juvenile. Do you know what I mean? It's like I've had my fun. I don't really care anymore. That's not really like a huge aim of mine. However, I do know that if I happen to be out and I see someone who, makes my nostrils flare, let's just say, I'll have the ability to go up and skillfully, start a conversation that's likely to be well received, and I'll be able to introduce the idea of maybe, pursuing that kind of encounter in a smooth and skillful way. And maybe it'll be well received, maybe it won't. But I'm putting it forth in the way that's most likely to be received, and there's a good chance of it working. That's my identity. I'm also a public speaker. I think I'm a pretty good public speaker. Pretty good. I've been doing it a long time. I also am a self-employed entrepreneur. Everybody's a fucking entrepreneur now, right? But I've been doing that. I haven't had a job. I've been fired from every job I ever had, by the way. Did you all know that? But anyway, so I've been self-employed for at this point, 19 years. But there was a point in time where I wasn't those things. Where if you called me up to speak in front of a crowd like this, I'd just be paralyzed, terrified, wouldn't be able to do it. You told me at a point in time, you'd say go talk to those random people. I'd have to be drunk beyond reason or goaded into it and humiliated until I finally did it. Right? There was a point in time I would be when I actually got fired from my hotel job and had to begin doing this full time, I was terrified then as well. I'm like, oh man, I don't have that regular paycheck that comes in the same amount every 2 weeks. What am I gonna do? But now I've done those things. Why? Because identity is fluid. You gotta feed it with experience though. So that's the thing. Go out and celebrate small wins until your identity slowly shifts. Identity is fluid. It's a very slow-moving fluid, though, right? It's going to take time. It needs evidence. This is very important. You got to develop these habits. A habit, it's like something that you're doing with regularity, not just when it's convenient, not just when you feel like it. Oh, I don't feel like going out. I almost never feel like going out. I don't want to go out. Go outside? I don't want to go there. You know how much bad shit can happen when you go outside? You get bit by an animal, like a tick or something. One time I got a tick on my penis. This is actually another true story. I had gone hiking or some bullshit, and I got a tick on the head of my penis, And I was like 14 years old, and I didn't want to like tell my mom, because like, Mom, help me with my penis. Like, no. And so I had to look, this was like 1995 or something, so we didn't have the internet. I had to look in an encyclopedia of tics, like look up tics. And it's like, oh, you could put you can put it like a match. You don't pull it out because the head will remain. You have to get like a match and like blow it out and then put it on the creature, and this will cause it to like release. So I did. I'm like, oh god damn, dude. I'm like in the bathroom, like, and then like it moved, and I just burned the head of my dick with it. Yeah, it's like, and I'm like, but now it's still there, and now I got to do it again. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, so I did it again, and then this time it came out. Look, I don't want to experience that again. I don't want to go outside. You can get a cancer, some kind of disease or some shit, skin cancer. Like, look, I go outside, I go straight to cancer. Look at this. Where's the privilege? I've heard about all this privilege. Where's the privilege? You get some fucking disease? It's terrible. You fall down, something like that. I don't want to go outside, but I do it. You know why? Because it helps me fulfill my goals in life. Decide who you want to be. Feed that identity by going out and proving it to yourself with small wins. I mean, like, when you're in that situation, ask yourself, what would somebody who's successful at this do? That was something that helped me tremendously when I first started, was the old fake it till you make it. Right? I just faked like I was somebody who was confident and who was good at this stuff. I'm like, okay, I made up a character for myself. This character was called Jeffy. And what was the difference between Jeff and Jeffy? Well, Jeffy was like a caricature of me who was like wore much more garish clothing. And I would say the defining characteristic of Jeffy was he doesn't give a fuck. Right? Like easy motherfucking E. He does not give a fuck. I kind of put myself in a position where it was like, what would a guy who's successful do in this situation? I would just do that. Right? Like if it was a movie, then I would just do that. Now, here's the thing. Fake it till you make it's pretty good, and it can help you in the beginning. But you're very quickly going to run up against the limitations of that. Right? And what are the limitations of that? Well, you can fake confidence, but you cannot fake competence. So there's only one way to gain competence. What's that? Experience. Experience breeds competence, which breeds confidence. Jeffy.